and Tricks webinar. We put on these tips and tricks webinars once a month. You can always visit our tips and tricks from ages past by going to blog.marksgroup.net, a truly wonderful resource to have on the thing that we know today as the internet. So let's jump right in. What are we talking about today? Well, today we're going to look at how to alternate background color. And I'm going to correct my spelling of precision. There we go, much better. We're going to look at summaries using formulas. Why would we want to summarize using a formula as opposed to a quote-unquote raw database value? We'll look at how to use the groups expert. And if we have some time, we'll look at how to ignore the time part of a date time value. So let's jump right in. Here's my normal training crystal report. And certainly what we have is just a bunch of contacts and a bunch of create on date. So the object is to actually stripe the report to alternate the background color, much as you would on an old tractor printer set of paper. Remember how it used to have the white and green lines? Used to love that stuff. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to be playing with the detail section and specifically the format section menu. Every section here being the report header, the page header, the details, the report footer, and the page footer, and any group headers or footers you may care to add, all have this section expert available to them. And within this, we can do all sorts of neat things. We can force a new page before, a new page after. We can suppress, that is, take that section right away from the report, or we can hide a little more, a little less severe than suppression. But what we're looking at today is the underlying color. So I'm going to go back to my blog post, and obviously this is the way that real programmers do it. We always store our code for easy reuse in the future. So what we're going to want to do is go to the detail section, and we're going to change the color. And I'm going to copy my code out of here. There we are. Back into my details section. And I go to the color tab. And I want to programmatically change the color here. Now I know that I can do that because I see this little X2 button here. And whenever you see a little X2 button in Crystal, that means that that particular item can be driven by a Crystal formula. Let's go here, and I'm going to go ahead and just paste in my code. So basically what this is saying is that if the record number is not even, then make the background silver, otherwise no color. I'm using these crystal constants here to denote the color. You can find a list of these. I find it easiest to actually just Google them on the web, but they certainly are available to you within the formula editor here. I'm going to go ahead and check my syntax. Very good. And I want to save, and then OK, and preview again. So as we see, it's now alternating the background color, and it's actually alternating the background color of the entire detail section. So if I make that thicker, we can see that it's not just worried about this line right here. It's actually concerned about the detail section as a whole. So again, I go back into my right-click format section, back to my color tab, back to my formula, and I can certainly modify the colors I'd like to use, or I can go ahead and just disable that. And now we're back to plain Jane vanilla. This can be a nice way to make a very large report easier to read. I'm a big fan of easier to read because when you think about these crystal reports, they are, of course, designed to be consumed by a human being, and if that human being does not or has issues trying to sort out what's on the report, then it's just not going to be a good time for everybody involved. Let me go ahead and just re-enable that. Very good. Moving right along. Summaries using formulas. What do I mean by this? Well, the first thing we have to do is get some sort of summarizable object on the report. I'm going to go ahead and insert one of my database fields. I'm going to insert the state field. Go ahead and shrink down my contact label. Crystal always makes the labels as long as the maximum length of the field, which is typically not what we want. For instance, my 2-character state abbreviation is incredibly long, so I can go ahead and just shrink that up. Okay, so we can see right away that most of my database does not have states, as it is mostly a training database. So let me go ahead and change the select expert to only grab those folks with states. And again, whenever you're going to work with the select expert, you can certainly feel free to use this cute little wizard-like dropdown. We can say the state is equal to New York, Pennsylvania, so on and so forth. But if we want any kind of real power, of course, we have to go to Show Formula and then on to Formula Editor, because this is where all of the magic happens in Crystal. So in this case, I want to make sure that my state field is not blank. Just like that. Always check your syntax. Use the little check mark with the X2 guy there. Good enough. Go ahead and save that. Okay, my way out. Now re-preview. Now what I'm getting is just certainly folks with states. So the idea is to summarize the number of different states on this report. So if we look at or think about rather, the classical way to which to approach this problem with Crystal, we would say run one report for Pennsylvania, count them all up. We'd run another report for New York and count them all up. Now the way that we'd count them all up is that we would just insert a simple summary field here. And the summary fields are actually very good at counting dumb things. In this case, we can have it count how many states there are on the report. Oop, that's a maximum. Hold on. We want the count. There we go. And what that's going to do for us is count up the last batch of states that it saw. Now, because we're looking at multiple states in the same report, it is a little confused. So what I want to do is show you a nice little stupid pet trick on how to get around this issue. So let me go ahead and delete my group. There we go. Very good. We're back to just a list of states. Okay, so what we're going to do actually, before we even get into summarizing, we have to create a formula which will determine what state is being displayed for any particular contact. So let's go ahead and make a new formula field. And I'm going to call this New York. And basically all this formula needs to say is if my state is equal to New York, then give me a 1. Otherwise, give me a 0. Does not have to be all in caps. I just do that because of my OCD. But again, the if, then, else is a core component of pretty much every programming language in the universe. So in Crystal, we are also able to leverage this quite fantastically as it occurs. So if my state is equal to New York, then give me a 1. Otherwise, give me a 0. So what does this field do now? Go ahead and drag that onto the report. And we can see that in the cases where we are in New York State, we're getting a 1. Otherwise, we're getting a 0. Let me go ahead and right-click. Oops. Change my format. Get rid of that decimal place. Very good. And we're going to rinse and repeat for Pennsylvania and Arizona. Insert another formula. We'll call this PA. And again, if my state is equal to PA, then 1, otherwise 0. And we'll drag that onto the report. Whenever I'm working with new formulas, I always drag them right next to the field that they're working on or from. And then I always preview the report, especially if I'm adding several formulas to a report at once. It's always a good idea to preview and just eyeball every new change that you make to the report. Otherwise, what you might end up doing is making 4 or 5 changes, and then things are really screwed up and you can't exactly figure out why, and you have to end up removing all those new changes anyway just to figure out what the hell was going on. So in this case, easy does it is the order of the day. Let me go ahead and format that field, take away my decimals. Very good. So now I'm calculating my PAs. And one more for Arizona. If, we're old hands at this now, right? If my state is equal to Arizona, then 1. Otherwise, 0. Okay, so now we are ready to summarize. So again, the idea was to count how many different states there were on the report without having to run 3 separate reports. So basically, we're running the whole report. The report is including all of the states that we have in the database, and these formulas are now in charge of cutting out on a per row basis who belongs where. And now it's a very easy thing to actually insert summaries on these new formula fields, because when we summarize or count a field, or in this case we do want a sum, and it doesn't know that we can do a sum yet until we actually select the formula field involved. I just want to draw your attention to that. If I look here, I don't see sum because in this case, my contact field is not a numerical value. So Crystal, in its infinite wisdom, does not think that we can sum that up quite correctly as it happens. In this case, we want to go ahead and just find our brand new shiny formula fields. There they are near the top. Of course they are. And now it is smart enough to know, that's probably a number, and you probably want to sum it. So this is going to be my New York sum. And I actually want to just hit OK at this point. And you'll see that when by default, Crystal will actually insert that a little weirdly. It'll insert it into its own little group footer because now the group header is actually cutting out the report. Now, the really nice thing about summary fields in Crystal is the ability to change how they operate by changing where they are on the report. So if I move that summary between the group footer and the report footer, it changes where that total breaks is really what it's doing. So now at the very bottom I have a grand total 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I love it. It seems to be correct. So let me go ahead and just get rid of those nasty decimal places. The bane of society. And we're going to go ahead and rinse and repeat. We're going to insert a summary. And we're going to select our PA. Oh, let me go ahead and shrink that up. It's a little out of control. There we go. Now there's 14 of them. And again, insert a summary based upon Arizona. We'll make it a grand total. Remove that little errant rebel. Shrink it up. And now we only have 1. I'm going to control-click to select 2 objects here. If I single-click to select that guy, and I hold on my control key, I can select multiple objects, and now I can right-click and format objects and do that little decimal fix to both objects at once. Another thing that I like to do when working with summary totals is you can see here that automatically they're a little bold. They're actually bolded. In this case, I also like to make them just a touch bigger and maybe move them around just a little bit, make them nice and pretty. And there we have it. Now, why you would care about this is because if you think about like a normal sales report that has maybe 10 different sales reps on it, and you need to calculate how many dollars a particular sales rep has brought in for whatever time period the report is running against. You may be tempted to run 10 different reports, or maybe have a single report for every sales rep and get your totals that way. A better way in this case would be to have the report include all of the sales reps, and then you could use a series of formulas to figure out who should get credit for what line item or for what row on the report. And then it's an easy expedient to actually summarize those totals at the end of the report. So you're going to end up with a bunch of separate totals, each total per sales rep. A more complex scenario might be if you need to worry about other conditions. If you can't just cut out dollar amounts by sales reps, you might have to cut out dollar amounts by sales reps in a particular region. So maybe Justin, the sales rep, has a different total for New York and PA, in which case, because this is a crystal formula, it can be as complex as anything else in crystal. So you can add an infinite amount of conditions here. If the username is Justin and the state is New York, then give me this. If the username is Justin and the state is PA, then give me this. So on and so forth. The real value to this is actually offloading the heavy labor or the heavy lifting to the actual formulas themselves. And what we do then in that case is allow the crystal summary to just be a stupid summary. And that's actually where crystal summaries are happiest to be. Let's move right along. Using the groups expert, an oldie but a goodie. Let's go ahead and actually insert a group. Well, let's actually delete the group we have now. If you ever have a group enabled, you can always delete it by going over here to your sections, right-click, delete group, and there we are. Again, always double check the way the report looks after you make a change. I'm going to insert a group on state. Now, obviously, what that does is that will now break the report out into states. Now, this is also why you might want to have summaries in the group footer. Let me just demonstrate this quickly. If I copy these summary formulas, you'll see here that depending upon where they are within the sections on the report changes the way they behave. So just to maybe illustrate that a little more brilliantly, I'll go ahead and remove those. So at any rate, what we have now is a report grouped by states. But let's imagine, not so hard as it occurs, that PA is my home state. So I want PA to appear at the top of my list of states on the report. Obviously, this is doing it in a alphabetically ascending order. But we can change that if we go to our group expert, which is under my report menu. What this will show you here is all of the groups that you have enabled for the current report. In this case, there's only one, and we want to go to the options on that group. And we can change the order in which this group appears. By default, it is ascending, or we can change it to descending, always nice, or we can change it to specified, which is my personal favorite. So now, with the specified order, what we're able to do is drop this list down, and what this list is showing us are all of the unique groups, because all in all, a crystal report group is just a unique value within a column out of that row that's being printed on the report, in this case, the state column. So I want to go ahead and select PA as my first group. And then I can go ahead and add in my others. Could be Arizona next, North Carolina, and New York. What you can also do, if you don't want to worry about adding the rest of your states here, if you go to this Others tab, what it's going to do is anybody that it can't put in that specified order is going to end up in this weird Others group. Or certainly you're more than welcome to leave them in their own groups. You can also discard them. I would not highly recommend that. There are other ways to discard records, namely the Select Expert. This would not be the place to do that. In this case, I want to leave them in others. I want to show you how that looks. So again, the idea was to change the order in which the states appear on the report. Now that we're done, we can OK our way out and now preview. And now at the very top of the report, we have PA. And then, true to its word, we have others, which includes absolutely everybody else. A nice little stupid pet trick if I ever did see one. Let's go ahead and move ahead. Ignoring date, time, precision. This is one of those pet peeves of mine that just drives me nuts. Let me go ahead and remove this stuff here and remove our group. Very good. Now we're back to just contacts and states. Okay, if we think about what's in a date time value, in a database date time value, it includes both the day, the month, the year, and also the time. Depending upon the database backend, it might include things like milliseconds as well. So what a real date looks like, if I go ahead and insert an actual date field on this report, I'm a big fan of this create on date here. I can never find it, so what I have to do is I have to click in here somewhere and keep hitting my C key till I find create on. There we go. Beautiful. We'll drag that onto the report. And we'll see here that because Crystal knows this is a date time data type, it's including the time precision as part of that value. Now, because my backend database happens to be a Goldmine database, and Goldmine, in this case, in the case of the create on value, does not track a time precision. It's only tracking the date portion of the precision. So what it's doing is that it's showing you 12 a.m. for every record, and it looks ugly. There are a couple of different ways to deal with this issue. If we want to take the quick and easy way out, ooh, Control Z is your friend to undo. Love that. The easy way out would be to just kind of fudge it that way, right? Am I right, guys? Will that work? Well, maybe you could like take the grid snap off, but you can still see it's not quite right. But more importantly, any kind of math you do on this value is going to incorporate the time precision part of the value. So if you're subtracting one date from another, you have to be very mindful that the time precision is also a factor in that. Okay, so another way to deal with this could be to right-click and format our field, and to just format it to take away that time precision, right? So I can just make it this nice little concise date. And there we go. But again, keep in mind that this is just changing the formatting of the field. This is just cosmetics. The back end is still tracking that time precision. And again, any date math you do on that field will take that into account. So what's a boy to do? Well, let me go ahead and change that back just so we're painfully reminded of what that looks like. Oh, that's the long format? How ugly is that? Ew. Okay, great. Even better. Okay, so the idea is to transform these dates into simply just the date portion of the date time data type, if that makes any sense. I'll have to look at that in post and see if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to get at is that you can actually convert. Where are they? Here we are. There is a date value function in Crystal, and what that does is that will only return the date portion of a date time value. Let's take a look at how that plays in Crystal. Of course, I'm going to make a brand new formula, and I'm going to call this simple date. And all I have to do is open up my date value function and create on date to it. Always check my syntax and save and close. Now we're going to drag that. Look at how long it makes that. That's crazy. Simple date. So now what we have here is converted from this date value. We're now getting just this nice, concise day only portion of the date time value. If we right click and go to format field, Yeah, you'll see here that it does not even allow us to select the time precision formatting on that value. And now any kind of math we do between this date and another date will ignore the time precision. Of course, that is assuming that the other date you're working with is also ignoring the time precision. Why this could be an issue is because I was recently doing a project for a client where I had to see how much time had passed since the last time I ran a process, and because the underlying database that I was using was also tracking the time precision, I was getting weird results. When I wanted to subtract one away from just like today, like I wanted to look at just things that happened yesterday. So I just want to subtract one from today's date. It wasn't enough because one precisely from right now would be 2:27 p.m. yesterday. So that would be the issue that we're trying to circumvent here. So again, we're using our lovely date value function here to just release the date portion of that value. Of course, if we go into our functions tree here, all kinds of fun stuff to play with, and certainly if you have the time or the wherewithal, I would highly recommend kind of poke around in here and see what's what. Here's our lovely date value function right there. You'll see that it will accept all kinds of values. So if you have if your date values are coming from, say, separate string fields, like in a crappy database where your year is coming from one column and your month is coming from another column, you could concatenate or combine those values into one unified date value using the date value function as exampled here. We are just about out of time, so I will just thank you all for coming by and giving us a watch. Please feel free to subscribe if you like what you see. We put on these webinars once a month. You can always go to Mark's Group or blog.marksgroup.net to see our tips and tricks from ages past. Again, my name is Justin Hill, and thanks so much for watching, and have a lovely day.